Hey folks, I have read your practicum logs number 2 this morning, as well as reviewed your portfolios part 3 and provided feedback. Remember in your Typhon logs that the vast majority of your feedback is going to be in Typhon, so be sure that you go into Typhon and read that feedback. Just want to remind you that if you have any outstanding changes that need to be made in your time log so that the time is associated with the correct course, that your duration column is reflecting 200 or more hours, and that your goals and objective and research column and your conference column all do not have more than 20 hours of which have been approved by faculty, all those errors have to be fixed. Your course cannot be signed off with a final grade unless you have met the requirement to have 200 properly documented and supported hours. So if you have your log is correct, make sure that you do not have any required revisions in your time log, and then you're going to be good to go. If you have questions or concerns about feedback that's been provided, don't hesitate to contact me. At this point, you guys are pretty locked and loaded. You all know what you're doing. It's really interesting and a blessing for me to read your journeys. Many of you I had in 618, so I can really see your growth and your insights and the way that you're beginning to really socialize to the role of the nurse educator, that you're beginning to have those aha moments that include, I can really do this, I'm excited by doing this, or that you feel energized by watching your students grow and seeing them have their own aha moments. Lots of good stuff. These logs for 620 are so good for me to read, not just because I get to see your growth, but then I get to see your own professional satisfaction and your own sense of pride when you are providing the beginning steps of that journey for your students. So it's a real blessing for me, and I appreciate the time and the intentionality you've put toward making those logs. I know that it's a tedious process, but it is my hope that you are beginning to have the insight of the value of that affective domain and understanding the value of thinking about our experiences and understanding how they are relevant to forming our own thoughts and our own practice. So those were well done. Your portfolios were equally exemplary. It's great for me to start putting faces with names, voices with people, and to see your own journey again, kind of that wrap up of where you were in 617 to where you are right now as you prepare to graduate in just not even 2 short weeks. Make sure that you make any changes to the portfolio if you intend to use it. The technology, the IT folks tell us that our graduates will have access to their Blackboard courses for about 3 to 4 months after graduation. Folks, that could change at any point. So know that if you want to use it and there's any recommendations, go ahead and make those changes. But also my encouragement would be to go ahead and begin to think about your own online portfolio and what tools are out there. I gave you an example that I did in Wix, on Wix.com. It's not a perfect process, and I did mine for a computer screen, so I can change the format and make it available for mobile devices. I just haven't had the time or the inclination to do that. But really go out there and look at the free software that's out there, as well as employers. If you work for an academic setting, very often there's a platform that your organization already pays for in developing an online portfolio. So give that some thought. Another one that many of you may have is LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has a portfolio tool associated with it as well. And if all you do right now is really just get a professional, crisp LinkedIn profile, that's time well spent, because that's often how people are going to go in and look at you. If they're going to look into social media, they're going to look in LinkedIn first. So be sure that you take the time to be thoughtful about making any adjustments in whatever tool you're going to use, with the understanding that we really are moving towards an electronic portfolio and away from notebook formats or just written CVs to give demonstration of your work, especially if you're going into an academic setting. So that being said, let me talk real briefly about next week. I know this doesn't feel like it at this moment, but I promise you the hardest part of your assignment is already done. If you have gone through 20 to 25 scholarly articles and you have created the matrix and you have been intentional and scholarly in that effort, the next step is just talking about what you found. You have step 24, 25, and 26. Step 24 is your analysis. It's your talking about your findings. what articles were similar and different in your articles. You're going to group these in thematically. You're not going to give me a summary of 15 included articles. You're going to group them according to how they are similar and maybe how they're different. You do want to talk about how things of the 15 or 15 plus that you are including, what did they say thematically? Let's say out of the 15, you found 3 that spoke about the use of simulation in the labor and delivery world, and it said that it increased student satisfaction in general. So those 3 all said that and they agreed. So you would do an entry using level headings to talk about these 3 articles and this is what they found. Maybe you found 2 that spoke about simulation and the OB student and improved safety in practice. Then you're going to put those 2 together and you're going to talk about them. You're going to group them systematically. Let's say of the 15, maybe there was 1 that said that simulation didn't have a long-term impact on OB students for confidence in practice. You're going to talk about that 1 outlier. That's the different one. That's the thing that not everybody else said, but it was still published in a relevant scholarly journal. So you want to do the things that were similar and the things that were different, and you want to do them thematically. You don't want to, I would avoid organizing them by quantitative or qualitative or types of studies. That's not really as meaningful as a thematic organization, and that's really what a good synthesis is. I should be able to go through and read the articles that you found and figure out the general idea of the generalized findings. You do need to put a little blip in there about the excluded articles. And normally this is just one section. It's why did you exclude the 3, 4, 5 that you excluded, and give a brief rationale for that so that when someone looks at your abstract that says that you did an analysis of 20 to 25 articles, whichever number you picked, and included 15, they're going to read the body of your article in the discussion section. They're going to go, well, what'd you do with the other 3 or 4? This is just a blurb that says, hey, these are the ones that I excluded and this is why. That doesn't have to be this crazy deep dive. You just need to explain why you excluded it. That's number 24 in the Prisma model. 25 is talking about your limitations. And in this section, you're going to talk about the limitations in your own research process, as well as bias and validity across studies and within studies. And again, this is a couple of paragraphs to do generalized summaries of the things that you found and the process you used that may lower the reliability of what number 26 is, which is your findings. So if 25 is your limitations and you're going to deal with bias and validity and in your process and across articles, then 26 is answering your PICO question. This is the inference. So if you go back up to your analysis and you read the summaries of those thematic topics, you need to take that information and be able to say, this was my PICO question, this was my research question. And based on this information, the generalized summary of what I found, this is how I can answer my PICO question. And once you've answered your PICO question and you've explained the answer, you can't just say, I answered it. Explain the answer. Then you need to say how it's relevant and talk about next steps. Why does a nurse educator in a hospital-based setting or an educational setting care that you found this information? How would they apply that to their practice? So you want to be able to answer your research question, then tell people why it matters, and then make recommendations on next steps. What would someone that wanted to look at this topic again, what's a different thing that they could look at, or what was an interesting thing that maybe you think we should follow up on? Maybe that outlying article that I mentioned that said simulation didn't have long-term effects on field confidence in practice. Maybe that's an area that you think that next step researchers should look at. That's the general structure of this part 3. Now, when you submit this, you're going to have a polished and completed part 1, and then you're going to immediately start up in the same paper with part 3. You don't need to include your matrix unless I have specifically said, I need to see your matrix again because there were some changes or things that you needed to add. So part 1, part 3 squished together. You're going to polish it. You're going to put in all your references. Remember in part 1, you skipped over that abstract. Well, an abstract tells you what you're going to research, how you're going to research, and what you found. The reason we skipped it in part 1 is because you didn't have your findings yet. So go back in and put in your abstract on page 2 and then pick up on your part 1 on page 3. So you'll have a title page, an abstract. You'll begin your writing on page 3 with part 1 that's all polished and cleaned, and then you'll pick up part 3 where your analysis of your findings occur. It then ends with your reference list. I'm going to encourage you that when you're done, print off those last 2 or 3 pages that are your references and go read your article from page 1 all the way through and check off any articles. If you come across a reference in your paper that isn't on your reference list, then you need to add it. We call that reconciling the references. We do that so you don't inadvertently plagiarize, so that you don't put a citation in that was not on a reference list and you don't have a stacked reference list that doesn't have citations in the body of the paper. Either one of those is a plagiarism violation, and you want to avoid that being this close to graduation. I know you know this in your head. Just get into the practice of printing those references off and reconciling it. And the other reason to do this is there have been a lot of moving parts in this assignment, and it would be super easy to miss one. Okay, it's your job to reconcile that. When you're done reconciling that, go back in and look at your format. Make sure that everything is included appropriately as far as format elements, and then you are done. So be thoughtful about this process, because if you get this paper correct and you're wrapping everything up, the digital poster is the fun piece. You're going to take bits and pieces from this paper, you're going to put them in a poster, and you're going to make it look pretty. I love doing digital posters. And the idea is that if you've done this well and you've really investigated your PICOS question, then you're going to have a poster that's going to tell somebody something they're interested in reading. So follow the blueprint that's provided in the Prisma model for steps 24, 25, 26. What I have just articulated to you is in the instructions. I'm just putting it in a different way. Touch base with questions. Use the Ask the Professor link for the who, what, where, when, where kind of questions. Touch base with me with anything personal. Know that I am here. I know you are tired, but you have less than 2 weeks and you are done, and you will be celebrating. My hope is that you all are all going to try to come to graduation on I guess not this Friday, but next Friday, and I will hopefully be able to at least meet some of you and put faces with names and hug you and congratulate you. Hang in there, folks. The light is at the end of the tunnel. Take care.